for doing this with
Thanks
me.
for doing this with me. Yeah,
I
it's
really
great.
appreciate this. When I started to read the book, the first line, where does anything begin, really? I'm like, okay, this is going to be interesting. And I knew that we had some things in common. We're in recovery together. We both have had sons who were addicted as well. That's a hard one. We both were married and divorced twice. He smiles. And I really love the way you put that one in here instead of and in failed marriages. You say that they're completed marriages.
Yes.
Completed,
Yeah.
and I love that. I love that. I like looking at it that way.
And that's not original to me. I have to own that. I overheard that one time, and when I was writing that section, I thought that's where it belongs.
Yeah, absolutely. Saying completed, they had a purpose and a time. Reading this book, I felt like I was on the journey with you. The way you write is very descriptive, and I felt like I was walking with you, honestly. The book is called Into the Thin, A Pilgrimage. And why don't you tell everybody just a little bit about it, because we want them to buy it, obviously, but just what maybe led up to you wanting to do this.
Well, more important to me than buying it is reading it. So
Awesome.
there's that too.
Okay, good.
So I guess what precipitated being called to walk was a very difficult year in 2010. And there was a succession of events that occurred within that year that I refer to in the book as an emotional crucifixion. And, it might sound a little dramatic, but that's the way it felt. I had a close friend and mentor figure in my life who had a relapse into his illness. My father-in-law at the time, who was a father figure to me, fell ill and passed away. One of my stepchildren had a terrible health crisis, and followed immediately by the suicide death of my son. And shortly after that, that mentor ended up passing away. And of course, we, my wife and I at the time, I think it's fair to say, and looking at it, in the rearview mirror, that it was a troubled relationship. Not excessively argumentative or anything like that, but a marriage that was troubled in many ways, and so it could not withstand that year of grief and loss and tragedy, and so we ended up separating and ultimately divorcing. So it was an awful lot to compress into. If you take any of those things separately,
right,
it's quite a life event. But then when you compress it all into that period of time, it's a little overwhelming.
I would say so. I would say so.
Yeah.
And you were sober through all of this.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Feeling all the feelings, and so that's a
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
a lot.
It's
Did you ever think about maybe to numb all of what was going on, or it never crossed your thought?
No.
Awesome.
I had referred to that actually. That I came into this experience thankfully with a lot of recovery behind me. So by that time, it was something that simply was no longer a part of life. And so it was. That's the easiest thing not to do. But there's all kinds of ways in this world to play dodgem, and easily, I looked at some of those things, distractions. But ultimately, it's the old, feel, deal, and heal combination where the way is through, not around. And so
Yes.
the next few years of my life proved to be very much about that, until I was walking along one day minding my own business, and then I had this experience of being called to this walk, this 1,000-year-old pilgrimage in Spain, for God's sake. You talk about out of the blue, and I'm walking along, and literally from one step into the next, and I write about this in the book, this experience of going to Spain, walking across the country to Santiago de Compostela, becomes part of my life, just like that.
Wow.
And I really honestly thought I had lost my mind. I said, this can't be. I mean, really.
Yeah.
So years had to go by. It was about 3.5 years from that point until the time when I was actually able to go. But thankfully, along with that blinding experience, was a thought that said, just live your life, and it's going to be okay, and you'll know when it's time to go. And ended up, of course, being true.
That's great. That's great. Sometimes I try to force things. So much. Hurry up! I know. Let it go. Give it to God, and and for a long time that was very, very difficult for me to do.
Yeah.
It gets easier, doesn't it?
With it's that wax on, wax off idea. With a little bit of practice,
Yeah.
Paying attention, I guess, to what's before us.
Yeah.
And saying, okay, what's this trying to show me?
Mm-hmm.
I had I ended up walking the pilgrimage in 2016. So the brief timeline is all that stuff happened in the year 2010. And I was called to walk in August of 2012. And I ended up walking in 16.
16,
In the
okay.
spring of 16,
Okay.
late spring. And, there was a false alarm for me around about the end of 2015, or 14 rather, going into 15. I thought maybe this is the year, and then there were some things that just presented that was like,
Not yet.
It's about discerning between what the ego is trying to tell us, because it can sound so good.
Yeah.
It can sound so good. And then what life, capital L, is trying to show us, and so. But I'd say it went perfectly, exactly as it was supposed to go. Not necessarily as it was expected, but certainly.
That's like my mantra. Everything happens exactly the way it's supposed to.
Right. Yeah.
Whether we like it or not, or it's what we had envisioned, and 9 times out of 10, it's better than what we ever could
in
imagine.
hindsight, it's always about it. You see how perfect it was.
Yeah.
Like, now I get it. It's always clearer that way.
Yeah.
But that's the nature of life on planet Earth.
Yeah.
Is that we don't get that. If we got to look ahead, it would ruin everything.
Yeah. Every once in a while, though, I just want to peek. Want to know what's coming. I like to prepare myself. I like to, brace for it. And then it's the whole thing is that's the control. That's the control, and not letting it go,
Right.
and trusting in something that you can't see. But I know now you feel it. You can feel it.
Right.
So whatever it is, for me, it's God. Whatever it is for anybody else, that's just, getting that peace and knowing that it is going to be okay no matter what.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that meter I was mentioning before. If you picture a meter with an analog meter with a needle on it, points true north or it falls flat.
Yeah.
And it's just having a sense of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which sense am I paying attention to, the physical sense or the spiritual sense?
Yeah. Did you have any expectations when you got dropped off in France? Just
When I-
start.
you know-
Did you have any idea of what you were hoping it would be?
Yeah, hope is a funny thing.
Yeah.
I really try and stay away from that,
Yeah.
honestly. But it's recommended. You know, the people have been doing this for 1,000 years, so there's a lot of human experience that's gone before. You're following in a lot of footsteps when walking the Camino de Santiago, and so time has shown, experience has shown that it's good to have some sense of why you're there. And so that's where experiences like the year 2010 come in mighty handy. Okay, I've got this package of stuff to sort through, to try to understand or make sense out of if that's possible. And so that's the thing that gets us walking, right? One day after the next, after the next. And then invariably, from out of left field, comes this humdinger that you thought you'd kind of dealt with, and find out that maybe there's some more things to consider here. So there's an energy, okay? There's a palpable, detectable, feelable energy on this pilgrimage, and really the pilgrimage is a metaphor for life. So we could tap into this sitting here in Bethlehem, Connecticut, as easily as I could in the middle of Spain. But there's an intelligence and a guidance that puts us at the right place at the right time with the right person who's going to say the right thing, that elicits some kind of a response, and then we have this little we have this little awakening, right? And so I like to describe the way this Camino experience tends to unfold, and there's basically 3 sections. If one walks the entire 800 kilometers, 500 miles, there's 3 fundamental expressions of how this thing unfolds. And from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port in France to, let's say, Burgos, there is the centering experience of this is a very body-oriented, surrounding-oriented, physically oriented thing. And to either side of that centering experience, there's some spiritual matter and there is some psychological matter. Moving forward from Burgos into, say, Astorga, there's this wide open middle section called the Meseta, which I write extensively about. It has this feeling of being very long walking days because it's just open expanse. There's just nothing but us in the walk, and I made those specifically longer chapters in the book to create that sense of space and seeming endlessness, if you will. And the centering experience there is the mind. It's about remembrance and reflection and recollection and pulling the things of life, you know. And to either side of that centering experience, there's some spirituality, there's some carnality, right? And then finally, when one gets into the region of Galicia, there's mountains, there's ascension, there's a lifting up, and the centering experience here is in the spirit, with psychological and physical on either side of that. And so when you put all that together, it's this whole experience, right? But I don't mean to say that, well, you know, it begins here, it ends here, then this thing happens, then this thing happens. It's all kind of woven in, which is why I use the language centering experience. And there's a piece I want to read that illustrates that.
Absolutely.
But so on the first day of walking, which is interestingly enough the hardest day of walking, you walk through a high mountain pass in the Pyrenees Mountains.
I felt your pain.
And in that day, let's see, I had wind, I had rain, I had cold, I had snow and sleet.
Yeah.
You know,
and you're going to keep going.
But on the way, you know, I describe seeing cows standing
Yep.
around, you know, and I make a silly little comment about, you know, aren't cows supposed to be leaning down when
Yeah,
there's rain
when
on the
there's
way,
rain.
right? And then the sheep that seem, you know, in the high meadows, there's these sheep that are lingering around, and they seem to just be very unimpressed with me. And so I make a few, it's just things
Yeah.
that you notice as you're walking
Mhm.
and the thoughts that go through your head, right? So those are some of the things that I noted on that first day. So then, you know, you cross the border into Spain and you end up in this place called Roncesvalles, and that's the first stop. And so this was at the end of the first
It's
night,
the first night.
and I'm laying in my bunk in the albergue, which is sort of like a hostel. And so what this talks about is how these different things kind of get woven together, even in a single day or a single experience. And here it is. Long before I came here, I'd heard of the mysterious energy of the Camino. And though it remains enigmatic, I believe it touched me today. It's like a wispy, ephemeral current, subtle and perfect. It flows toward Santiago de Compostela from everywhere, neither pushing nor pulling. The pilgrim rides along on this current, and it infuses the body when the more carnal energy wanes. It infuses everything, really. It has intention and it has intelligence. It has a thing to tell me. It is expressed in the wind at my back and the wind in my face, in the driving rain and the warmth of the refuge. It lives in the air, in others, and in the inspiring answers to fearful thoughts. It shows itself to me in the peaceful eyes of standing cows and indifferent sheep, in the reassuring songs of cuckoos, and in the holy act of ascension. I am relieved it has not forgotten me, since it called as I walked along a country road in Morris, Connecticut. So that's kind of how the dang thing works, you know. It just kind of all weaves kind of together, and you put, that's the first day, so you put 36 days of walking, days like that, some more dramatic than others.
Mm-hmm.
And
Life.
at the end,
Like
there's
that.
yeah, right.
Some days are more dramatic than the others.
And as you said before, it's about, you know, no matter what, keep walking.
Yeah, keep walking. You have to.
Yeah.
I loved every minute of it. I couldn't get enough. I understand that there's going to be a date in May where
Yes.
people can come up and see you at the, and I don't know all of the details at the bookstore. Is it going to be a signing?
It's actually at Wisdom House.
Wisdom House?
In Litchfield.
Okay.
It's a retreat center, and you can go on their website, wisdomhouse.org. It's on May 8th.
Okay, May 8th.
I love to support Wisdom House because they're very generous with
That's awesome.
you know, bringing people in and putting on programs like this. So
Very nice. Will you be signing?
I'm going to be signing. In
Okay.
fact, that's what's in it for me. Is I'll bring some books along if some folks would like to buy books, and of course, you know, if anybody brings a book that they've purchased on Amazon or someplace like that, then I'm happy to sign that too. I'll sign just about anything you put in front of me except a blank check. So.
Sounds wonderful.
Yeah, right.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you so much for doing this. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
And buen camino.
Buen camino.
Thank you.